This episode is sponsored by Benny.
Bills. Why do we keep getting Bill's mail?
Doesn't socializing suck? I can't believe they made a whole ism around it. I mean, you have to have the insight and intelligence to know how to navigate highly complex situations, often going in with very little information about the person you're talking with. You might find yourself having a perfectly innocent conversation about the Hindenburg disaster, and then the other person says that actually they were conceived on a blimp and their nickname growing up was Our Little Hindenburg. Ouch. Frankly, it's a miracle we're able to have any sorts of relationships at all, what with all of the nervousness of being subsumed by our perceived social betters. And so, for those of us who have difficulty not bringing up forbidden knowledge, like Chuck Palahniuk's short story Guts, in our daily lives and traumatizing everybody who's foolish enough to look it up, what are we to do? Suffer the shame of being an outcast? Ha! Even the lowest forms of life deserve to find some peers, some camaraderie. But what cost would we be willing to pay to improve ourselves? What dark and forbidden tools could we use to cobble together some sort of presentable human being? Well, usually I would take a neutral stance and allow the episode to speak for itself, but today I'm going to play the devil's advocate and make a case for how Bobby Hill, in this case, did nothing wrong. My viewers, you can be the judge, jury, and if need be, the executioners in this case. But your honors, as I'm sure you'll come to see, my client is simply built different. We open with the boys being boys, standing up on the overpass trying to terrorize passerbys with their best Star Trek impression.
Arm the photon torpedoes!
No, that's not quite right. Picard was all about diplomacy and edging. Let's get the true warbird in here.
Arm the photon torpedoes!
Ah, excellent. Before they begin their assault on that Jem'Hadar ship, Joseph mentions that he's having a birthday party, one where, gasp, both boys and girls are invited, setting up our conflict. This must be more of a southern thing, or potentially a regional thing, because I remember going to plenty of parties where everybody was invited. Maybe this is a holdover from the whole debutante practice, where aristocratic girls were presented to society as a person available for marriage, so they kept the boys and girls, pretty separate until that point. And yes, Bridgerton, I can feel your moist shadow looming over this subject. And while we're on the subject of presentable ladies, we get our first actual view of Luanne's beauty school.
What was the issue? Miss Platter?
It didn't look good?
No.
Now this may be weird to say, but I kinda really sorta fucking hate how the beauty school plot goes for Luanne. Up until this point, Luanne has been shown to be a very competent, if somewhat stressed and easily flustered person, but everything about this whole beauty school thing just drags her down and makes her feel like a total dumbass.
The most difficult cut in beauty school is the cut that separates first-year students from second-year students. Think about that while you study for next week's final exam, Miss Platter.
It's because of the beauty school plotline that Luanne starts to settle into this more typical dumb blonde archetype, and it really hurts my heart. The transformation isn't instant, but this is the episode that starts to push her down that slippery slope. And I get it, dumb jokes can be very funny, but they're beginning to sacrifice what makes Luanne truly excellent. You can really feel some of her dimensions being shaved off. It's one thing to show her being overwhelmed by trivialities, but the writers will crap on Luanne's beauty skills again and again, my god.
Hey, what's cooking, good Oh!
Well, I do not like it either.
Thankfully, they do pull it back a bit by allowing her to serve as the older and wiser tutor for Bobby, who is currently getting pressured by Hank to go to Joseph's boy-girl party.
Hey there, Bobby. I guess they found a cure for the cooties.
What are cooties?
Well, when I was a boy, that's what we called the germs you got from girls.
Oh, you mean like chlamydia?
I'm glad to see that the lessons from Peggy's sexual education class stuck with Bobby. The boy knows his stuff. And perhaps that's why he's so nervous about going over to the party. He's aware that not everything that happens in the sexual arena is purely touch football.
What if I get filled up?
Oh, you just need some practice.
Luanne's right? Wrong? Your honors, we're really getting off topic here. This is where I need to start building my case for Bobby's innocence. Let us remember, this near honor student is merely 12 years old. Clearly he has not gone through the groin-grabbingly awful experience of puberty and has little to no experience with any romantic feelings. His parents are the polar opposite to Gomez and Morticia Adams, so he has no role models of romantic affection, and for much of his life he has only had the faintest of interactions with any girls at all. Luanne and Connie only moved in this year, so the only girl he's had to speak to for 10 years is his mother. So is it any wonder that, when surrounded by a middle school of girls who are going through growth spurts and quasi-motoification, that he would have a full-on panic attack? And besides, your honors, I think there may be some sort of chemical agent affecting his mental state as he goes through this frankly horrific trip down the Willy Wonka chocolate river boat of adolescence. With these considerations buzzing around his head, and with that very nostalgic Mrs. Doubtfire lunchbox, Bobby is torn between two different parenting styles. On the one hand, Hank is extremely enthusiastic about his son getting into the dating world, and yes, I said it, dating, not just a party where he interacts with girls. Hank wants his son to find someone special and begin a relationship. And while I can definitely understand that, Bobby is a great kid after all, and I could see him getting into a cute little relationship, Hank is failing to see that his son is really going through some stuff right now and is beginning to push back.
It's just a dumb party.
A dumb party with girls?
Well, I don't like girls.
Peg, honey, close the screen door.
On the other side of things, Peggy is starting to take the more sober side of the argument, giving Bobby support for ditching out on the party, and seemingly because she, Peggy Hill, is nervous about her son growing away from her. Her little baby is beginning to spread his wings, which causes Peggy to infantilize him.
Do you know anyone who would like a hot fudge sundae?
And while I can't make a sweeping statement about when someone should start dating, as that is perhaps one of the most case-by-case decisions ever, what this really comes down to is this. Do Bobby's parents trust him to make the right decisions for himself? And while that might seem like a tricky question on its surface, given that Bobby is a minor after all, we aren't talking about some hypothetical adult situation. This is simply about whether Bobby has the autonomy to choose to socialize how he wants to. Can Bobby be allowed to make his own decisions? This is America after all, and as long as what he's doing doesn't present criminal or violent intent, then who are we to cast our propane-powered stones? And boom, this is where we get introduced to our smoking gun, Exhibit A in the case of Bobby Hill versus the world, the head. For you see, Luanne has been given a mannequin head from her beauty school, which will determine her final grade in the class, and needless to say, she's a little overprotective of it.
It's got real hair and everything.
Well, Luanne, it's a very nice head.
Don't touch it!
God, I love the passion in that line delivery. It's so good. I also really love that outfit Luanne is wearing. Those colors look great. I wish they got her out of her regular Christmas color default outfit more often. Upon seeing the head, Bobby experiences his first feeling of desire, which leads him to a rather interesting situation. Why would he get dressed up for this? And why would Luanne take her top off in front of an open window? God, that moment gets a laugh out of me every time. It's so weird. But, not to be deterred, Bobby waits for Luanne and Peggy to get out of the house before he decides to make his move, which is extremely considerate to do. He even blocks the front door, creating a safe place for him to begin his practice. And let me remind you all, he isn't doing anything explicit with the head, he is simply talking to it, and if sitting by yourself speaking into the air is a crime, then you'll not only have to charge me for the same crime, but also yourselves for encouraging such criminal behavior. And that Alamo beer Bobby is drinking, clearly an animation error by the staff, but we'll be suing for child endangerment and defamation another day. And while that case is going through discovery, let's take a quick detour back to the Luanne story, which finally gets us something memorable and delightful from Bill. This is the first time all season that we're made aware of what Bill's job actually is. He's an army barber, and that feeds directly into Luanne's career path, making them something of a master and pupil, and it wouldn't be for many, many more seasons before we finally start to capitalize off of this dynamic, which is a darn shame given that they are both seen as more of the, okay, so I'm gonna try to be as gentle as I can here. Bill and Luanne are definitely seen as more of the, crybaby losers of this world, and so it seems like they would make natural allies.
Clean lines, nice shape on the cowlick. Primo cut, Luanne.
Thank you, Mr. Dotrieve.
And in the same vein, I feel like Hank and Bobby could have made a great team for Bobby's situation, as Hank encourages his son to get out and practice speaking to girls. And I like this advice. I like it because the reasoning is sound. The more you practice, the less scary it will seem, and the more natural you'll become and the better you'll get. The fundamental idea is sound, but the problem is that many people are really afraid of looking like an idiot, especially when it comes to dating situations. And besides, what's going to happen if Bobby actually takes this advice and tries to go out there and practice asking girls out? He might alienate some people, he might make them feel uncomfortable, and even if they said yes, well, it doesn't matter because they're just a practice girl. So what happens if she starts to develop feelings for Bobby? What's he gonna say? Like, sorry baby, you were just my training wheels, hit the bricks, you know? So what's a boy who wants to practice socializing to do? Since the most frighteningly horny game ever, The Sims 2, wouldn't be coming out for another 7 years, Bobby needs to find an alternative that allows him to practice with compassion towards his fellow human beings. And that is why he starts to interact with this head, because there is no risk of causing any emotional damage. Any awkwardness that he experiences is purely one-sided and he can get over it. He doesn't have to drag anybody else into his problem. And here comes the best part of the whole season, the dating training montage, set to the Beach Boys' Wouldn't It Be Nice? It has so much of a summertime love feeling, while also being so richly ridiculous. And honestly, good for Bobby. It's humiliating for sure, but it's only because we're observing it. There's plenty of things that we do in private that are very necessary to our happiness. For example, going to the bathroom, weeping uncontrollably into our sequenced Major Kira pillow, and reading. All horrible, shameful acts that should never be witnessed. And so yes, when my client heard that there was going to be a spin the bottle game at Joseph's party, he decided to take the next logical step. He set the mood, got into his stylish robe, no doubt a gift from his loving parents, and began a bit of wine and dine. And if the universe doesn't care that our degenerate young friend is slopping all over those frigid lips, then who are we to judge? But sadly, oh so sadly, a regrettable and life-altering event took place. While Bobby is busy getting busy, his mother comes home and, upon hearing something suspicious, decided to invade her son's privacy, leading to this.
Bobby! Mom!
Now I ask you, I really ask you, who is the victim here? Is it Peggy, who went peeking where she shouldn't, the head, an inanimate and might I say immaculately preserved object, or is it Bobby, who was subject to a frankly reckless upbringing?
You're the one who parks him in front of the TV and makes him watch all them Muppets. They got frogs kissing pigs. What the hell did they think was gonna happen?
In order to fix this situation, Hank lies to his son, saying that he's as open-minded as the next person, and locks the head away. And I think Bobby himself makes a very excellent case here. He says he only needs the head until the party. Afterward, he won't keep it around, providing a very sober reality check to his father, and calmly reminds Hank that it isn't a crutch, but something that Bobby has come to depend on to get through life. And your honors, I have to ask, is your toilet a crutch? What about your shower? You animals get naked in that thing after all, naked if we're lucky, and that head, I propose, is no more of a shameful tool than any gluteal orthotic. In order to protest this travesty of justice, Bobby attempts to reclaim the head, which causes Hank to go completely overboard and split Bobby's head open. The plastic one, that is. But to Hank's immense credit, he does try to do right by Luanne, serving as her model head at Luanne's final. And hey look, I don't know much about beauty, I don't know much about anything, but I don't care what that beauty school lady says. Hank's hair is clearly thick enough for her to write on it in pen, and Luanne still managed to shape it into a look that's super uniform. That is damn near a high top box cut, and yet she still gives Luanne an F, resulting in what may be my absolute favorite line delivery that Mike Judge ever performed.
That means you fail.
What a bitch.
God, I nearly do a spit take every time I hear that. Despite the poor grade, Hank gives an inspirational bit of praise to his niece, melting the icy heart of the instructor.
I guess I just got so far from the hair and so into the whole power trip of running the academy.
Gotta be honest here, I really feel what she's saying. The first time I taught a college-level course, I definitely felt the same surge of authority, but it's important to teach with compassion. Set your standards and stick to them, but acknowledge that sometimes life happens, and as long as the student is making an earnest effort to meet the standards of the course, then they deserve to pass. Unless, of course, they do something really fucked up, like citing from AO3 or writing in Comic Sans. But Luanne does neither and gets a round of applause from people who will only exist to shit on her later. And while we're on the subject of underappreciated talent, can I just give Peggy an A+ for this episode? Everything about her traumatized reaction to Bobby's, moment of indiscretion is just a pure delight. From not being able to face Bobby when Hank opens the door, to her latching onto Bobby and having to be physically dragged across the floor, to this just, perfect expression.
Come here, you're so pretty.
So amazing, so decadent. Oh god. But yes, eventually Peggy lets him go to the party, and while on the way there, he gets a quick pop-in from Connie, who is surprisingly sympathetic and chill about Bobby's plight.
Hey, aren't you going to Joseph's party?
I can't. It's a make-out party and my dad took away my plastic head.
What a buzzkill.
In the end, Connie and Bobby end up sharing a practice kiss, which is just such the perfect little nothing of a moment, both demonstrating how the things we build up in our head actually aren't that frightening when you're with someone you trust, and that children will stumble into moments of affection and care that they don't fully appreciate at the time. But fuck all that unintentional sweetness of childhood's long lost. Bobby came here to play, and when that bottle finally falls on a certain someone, he doesn't let anything step in his way, launching himself at Nancy Gribble like an Elden Ring fan towards a blue waffle. How ironic that Bobby was so afraid of getting felt up that he overcompensated and became exactly what he feared most. By that I mean he was clearly unsuccessful in this momentary lack of judgment. Joseph is still friends with him, Dale didn't shoot him dead, and Hank didn't saw Nancy's in half like the last object Bobby kissed, and therefore we can have cause for reasonable doubt. And with that, ladies and gentlemen of this supposed jury, this is what we're left with. It was an impressionable tale of a sprite of a boy led astray by the encouragement of his father, the crushing domineerance of his mother, and the negligence of his cousin. I don't like to use the word entrapment very often, but this is a textbook case. And may I remind us all that the head wasn't even Miss Platter's personal property. In her written deposition, the instructor herself even called it a practice head, and given the pristine condition that Bobby left it in, I think we can confidently say that it was well cared for and that my client conducted himself in a respectful and, most importantly, private manner. If you condemn Bobby Hill, then you must also condemn anyone who has practiced CPR on a training dummy. So before you rule in this case, I beg you, look at the hand you are about to use to type your comment. What foul, but perfectly legal depths has that hand plunged? Be embarrassed for Bobby, be sympathetic for him, but to call him a face-fondling freak would be a step too far. Find it in your hearts to care for him, because after all, this is the season finale. They had to do something to shock and titillate, to scandalize, to guarantee that audiences would want a second season, and somebody had to fall on that sword, and to his credit, that person ended up being poor Bobby Hill. It wouldn't be a stretch at all to say that the future of the show, the crux of the entire King of the Hill universe, was maintained by Bobby's selfless sacrifice. And for that, we salute you, Bobby Hill.
Yo, Sharice, you Stone Cold Fox, what up?
In closing, we can definitely say that this episode, titled Plastic White Female, has been reviewed to death. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for next time, as we'll be doing a few very special things before we get into Season 2. See you then.
I read somewhere that Germans, they're very tolerant people. Their culture admires all kinds of freaks.